Oh ho ho! Welcome to the party. It's your boy. Fucking Eddie Durkin here, man. Welcome to part 8 of the Hardy book. Hold on to your sack, cause we're going to fucking Castletown. The beginning. Born Edward Thomas Durkin, March 5th, 1983. A pissy sort of March day, where the month came roaring in like a lion. My mother was in a bad way, yelping and shouting, bollocking my dad for getting her pregnant in the first place. Fuck this crack, Biddy, it's too intense. I'd be more used to you down the pub than in here, he said. So down to the bookie shop he went. He had a £20 each way on a horse called the Boston Dangler. She came in third place, 12-1. He won £240. That's like £300 these days. Or maybe it was $350. I dunno, man. With inflation and all that shit, like, who knows, hey? Who knows, hey? Who fucking knows? And with that jubilation, he didn't bother his hole coming back to the hospital to see how myself and the owl lady were coping. He went directly into the pub instead, got pissed as a newt, bellowing, "Sure, I can see those cunts any time I like. I'll give the hospital an old bell tomorrow afternoon. Let the dust settle a touch." Looking back now, I can't really blame him. Sure, the patience required to sit affectionately by as your spouse is being torn at the seams would be a tall order for a man of his generation. There was little interest in such events back in his day. Small-minded cunts. He was born at home in the cottage, along with his siblings. That's how it was back then. Hard times, rearing hard people. Plus, all that blood, sweat, tears would be distressing. Not to mention, smelly. He can be awful touchy around biological functions. Back in 1979, he headbutted his own brother Mick as he was driving his Mark I Ford Escort. Mick farted with the windows up after an all-night pub lock-in, an impromptu stout fest down in Duncreeby's pub. My uncle lost consciousness, driving the car at speed over a hedgerow and into the neighbour's front garden. That's something that would test the mettle of even the hardiest of men. Witnessing the trials of childbirth would have broken his mind. That said, how could he resist the allure of rapid-fire free pints, dished out with expedience from benevolent lads, bestowing praise upon him for the birth of his son, a la me? Can you imagine how sumptuous those free pints must have been? I doubted for 1 second he spared a thought for the falling hammer of impending responsibility. I was another mouth to feed, a blank canvas, a candidate for the future of mankind. It was yet another layer of responsibility which ultimately laid ahead of him. But I would say he had mad old crack. Perhaps such behaviour eventually led to my abandonment issues. Suffering from an inferiority complex later on in life, which led to my lack of confidence in the job sector. Seeing me fired from umpteen different employers. Sure, fuck it. What can I do about it now? No use crying over spilt milk, is there? No. You live and you learn. Deal with the hand you were given. My mother was overjoyed at my agonizing birth. She held me tight and thanked God for overcoming the ordeal. She wanted to give me a fancy title, so she named me Edward, though Eddie became the default after only 2 days. Dad said it had an earthy, working-class ring to it, and the rest is history. Castletown, that's my home, boy. A bittersweet love affair, marking the triumphs and failures of the man who managed to win the coveted King of the Town competition back in 2010 against all odds. KOTT is a bizarre series of ad hoc competitive events, conjured up by sage headcases and hard lads alike. A tournament spanning generations, where the winner has the prestigious honour of wearing the coveted horse's yoke, adorned with the plaques of previous annual winners. To celebrate this golden achievement, myself and my close friends, known locally as the Hardy Bucks, went to Ibiza, taking the yoke along with us. We even got to meet Canning Town's finest, Danny Dyer, at Eden nightclub. The same night I met a well-to-do South Dublin woman with one of the finest bodies I've ever seen. Though, that's all the encounter really was, a quick meeting, before being swept away into the ensuing chaos. But by God, I'll never forget such an encounter. The bodywork, man. Oh, the bodywork. Man, Danny Dyer though, talk about first class. You'd want to see him in action. He was hanging out with some big fat lad who was wearing a Miami Dolphins NFL shirt and a white headband like Mark Knopfler, the guitarist from Dire Straits. He just kept shouting, "Uggy, uggy, uggy! Oi, oi, oi!" The punters lapped it up. Who'd have thought such a meaningless, primitive expression could mean so much to so many? I'd Google the origin of such a classic phrase as "Uggy, uggy, uggy, oi, oi, oi," but my Wi-Fi is currently on the blink. My first impression of greeting Dyer was his surprising height, standing around 6'1" tall, the same as myself. It was the reverse of the time I'd met Bono in Dublin back in 2002. Turns out he was surprisingly small. That said, he was a stocky little fucker. But to be fair to him, he gave us all the time of day, so fair play to him for that. Myself and my mate Ozzy J met him by chance. But that's a different story for another day. I told Dyer at the time in Ibiza I was a fan of his work. I gave him mad props for living among hard nutters of Britain's deadliest men. He said in response, Nice what geezer. What's that you got round your fucking neck?" I said it's a horse's yoke from the much coveted King of the Town tournament. "Yeah, have a pill, sunshine." It was one of the best nights ever. Until things started to unravel. The first blow to the night came after paying €40 for a bottle of water. Those bastards must have had big windows, because they seen us coming a mile off. Unfortunately for me, I got so high, I jumped into the sea euphorically, wearing the horse's yoke. I lost half of the miniature brass placards, thus destroying the ancient straw packing inside the leather casing. By all accounts, it had taken a pounding from the salt water. To make things worse, my friend, French Toast O'Toole, vomited a mixture of Jägermeister, Red Bull, and a half-digested burrito all over it, in the back of the cab. We were heading back to the hotel in San Antonio. We tried cleaning it with bleach, washing up liquid, and Brasso. But alas, it had nearly disintegrated. Talk about a travesty. When I got back home, I had my title stripped, bringing shame upon the lot of us. The trustees of KOTT threw the horse's yoke into a dumpster and haven't bothered with the event since. Bunch of fucking crybabies. The one saving grace was Dyer had signed his name on it with a gold permanent marker. Speaking of babies, I can't really remember being a baby or a toddler, as it was ages ago. I have certain snapshots in my mind, but I'm certainly not going to go into detail describing them. They were nice times for sure. Play school was a total DOS as well. All I had to do was play with toys all day, while being doted on by MILFs. It was like an extension of the womb, relaxed, easy going, like those cushy jobs you hear about up in Google. Not a care in the world did I have. Sometimes I wish I could go back there, instead of contending with the tedium of adult life, utility bills, responsibility, and the ravages of wasted time. Talking banal pub talk to idiots up the town. Nosy shower of pontificating bastards. They're the sediment of society. Weird-looking middle-aged cunts that do nothing but exist to talk shite. They'd ask you more questions than that Jeremy Paxman schleimball, prying into your business, not because they care about you, but only for loading up on gossip for later on. As Stephen French, the Liverpool gangster from Danny Dyer's Deadliest Men would say, subterfuge and misdirection are the key to dealing with such windbags. As the old saying goes, treat them like a mushroom, keep them in the dark, and feed them pure shite. That's my approach to dealing with awkward, confrontational, career-orientated questions. There is a judgmental hierarchical culture in Mayo that categorizes people on the types of work that they do, like an unwritten occupational caste system. It's also noted how much work that you do, that is, if you actually do any work at all. There's a plethora of townies who are quite content with sitting at home all day, watching films and collecting the dole. I have to mention at this point that I'm currently unemployed, and have been on paper since 2004. But I'm relatively happy this way. Sure, the money isn't great, but I can sleep in till noon if I want. And don't have to pay any tax. If anything, I'm as wise as that skinhead. You know, the lad from Tibet, the Dalai Lama, the dude in the NHS glasses, who slings a red towel around his shoulder. He's pretty chilled out. Probably from all that Nepali temple ball hash he does be smoking. When it comes to intrusive questioning, my extended family members, most notably uncles, are the worst, constantly grilling me on my current life path. You're not getting any younger. A rolling stone has no moss. If you listened to me all those years ago, you wouldn't be in this mess. You could be the manager of a supermarket. You're a lazy dosser. Fuck off. For years I sat and listened to them, on my case all the time they were. And just as an act of defiance, I had to go against them. If they were telling me to be a lazy prick, then I would have been working hard. I'm just a rebellious bastard. Fuck! I only had myself to blame for naively telling them all and sundry my business, only to have it later used against me from moral high ground merchants in an argument. It was a bit like Kerry Katona, endlessly dissecting every element of her life for any old wanker to read in those daft women's magazines. Except I didn't see any financial gains from publicly airing my dirty laundry across most of the UK and Ireland. Discovering the mushroom theory was a real game changer. I learned about the virtues of peddling complete fabrications to scandalmongers. The bullshit possibilities were endless. I'd tell different folk I was doing various jobs. Just like Vladimir Putin's avant-garde schooled interior minister, Vladislav Kurkov, who suggested the Kremlin support all opposition groups. I did the same thing, so nobody could get a grip on Eddie Durkin's base reality. They treated me like a new man, with a new level of respect. I was the talented Mr. Durkin. One week I was an engineer, the next I was a diplomat, an accountant, a hospital porter, a sous chef. The future was blown wide open. Whenever someone asked me how I made a living, I would simply lie through my gnashes, saying I worked in some kind of white-collar, numbers-bod position. Things began to pick up. Soon I was invited to dinner parties, spa days. I even blagged in a helicopter ride from a local real estate developer. So long as I just nodded, kept my trap shut, and hung about in the background, I'd get a touch of the sweet life. This handy Rolodex of vague-sounding job titles was intended to fob off any conceited old classmates I'd encounter, especially those with intimidating financial credentials, or job resumes, as they say in the States. Most of them were unable or too disinterested to see past the smokescreen, merely shrugging off such dull information, allowing for more interesting conversation. Life was a real breeze. I was getting away with it for months. That's until last week I'd been caught out while attempting to mislead my old classmate, Michael Jennings. He's one of those big shot solicitors who lives in a cushy house with a cushy life up the cushy fucking town. Money is no object to that lad. He always had the best of everything. After a recent awkward encounter with him, the words insurance actuary blurted out of my mouth before thinking. Carelessly, I downloaded from my short list of random job titles I'd stored in my brain cloud. It seems I'd painted myself into a tight corner. And I'd come a cropper. The jig was almost certainly up. Any other beguiler would have quit the charge there, but not Durkin. I've been known for digging myself out of holes before. I'd ignorantly dig so far that I'd eventually pop out the other side. Or that was the plan, at least. Jennings, being a fancy lawyer, was much too savvy to deceive. I knew he was onto me instantly. He smelled the fraudulence a mile away. If word got out, I'd been telling work-related falsehoods. I'd be the butt of every joke at the upcoming town hall meeting. That meeting, in and of itself, is a fucking joke. Jennings, being the smug prick that he is, would get great mileage out of an anecdote like this. He's forever telling tales of others' misfortunes and their folly. He can be seen guffawing to his cronies, sharing confidential casework with his circle of associates. He's an arrogantly self-assured man, constantly manicuring people's perception of him. I often see him driving around in his fancy metallic gun grey Audi A5 Sport, wearing designer suits and those fancy wax jackets English lords wear around luxury estates. Thick head of neatly sculpted hair on him, shaped like a modern-day Mattel Ken doll. He's got a face like Billy Zane in Titanic. Who does he think he is? He's captain of the golf club this year, so he is. Townies almost bow to him while passing in the street. You'd swear they were meeting the ghost of Gaddafi. Back in school, he was the big man on campus, captain of the football team, off scoring screamer goals, while I was stuck sitting on the bench, happy to be subbed on, usually in the final 10 minutes. He had the best of everything. Personalised Adidas Predator boots. As kids in school, we'd have toy day. We'd take in with us our cherished toys from home. I brought some of my older brother's hand-me-down Star Wars figures, which I loved, even if they were passé at the time. All the other kids gasped when Jennings came in, standing tall, like King of the Hill. Every last one of the Turtles figures he had with him, all neatly lined up. All of them. Shredder, Krang, even the Technodrome, for fuck's sake. I didn't even know they made them. Every Christmas, he and his family went off on holidays to Orlando, coming back in January with a nice bronze tan and fancy new threads, Reebok pump and LA gear jobs. Everybody thought he was unreal. He was a celebrity. And to top it all off, I had a 6-year unrequited crush on his now wife, Hannah Sheehan. I never did tell Hannah my feelings for her. Never seized the moment out of fear I'd be rejected. Always trying to get her attention by acting the fool. Fat use. She was the finest looking girl in all of secondary school. She was very well to do. Her parents own a 12-bedroom house on the hill overlooking the town, with horse stables and an indoor pool. She's tall, athletic and effortlessly elegant. Courteous and well-bred. Sallow complexion. She could have been a supermodel if she wanted, but she was much too grounded and down to earth to pursue such a vapid career in vanity. She never came across as a vain sort either. Soft, mellow presence, with a rich and dark husky voice. She became a biological engineer in the finish. Obviously smart too, the full package. You might think, Eddie man, you sound like all of the other begrudgers. And you'd be right to think that. We're like crabs in the bucket. We stop anyone else from getting above their station, except those who have old money. They always get out, and by God, they do very well for themselves. I had hoop dreams too, and potential, but the coach was only an old bollocks. I don't know what she saw in Michael Jennings. Big fucking sportsman's head on him, straight back, rigid posture and manicured hands. Fucking cuticle jobs. He's a bit of a Patrick Bateman job if you ask me. You know, the lad from American Psycho. But now the pair of them are like Castletown's answer to the Beckhams. You wouldn't really see much of them unless they were home from London during the holidays. But now they've moved back home. So this whole actuary debacle with Jennings started when I met him in Duncreeby's pub. I hadn't seen him for a few years, and he caught me off guard at the bar, as I was having a few Friday rollover pints with my main man, Buzz McDonnell. I was hungover from a few quiet pints that led to a full-blown Thursday night piss-up in town. Buzz was showing me some questionable sexual material about a shamed politician on a WhatsApp group, caught up in a media sex scandal with his raunchy messages on social media. Suddenly, a firm hand gripped my shoulder, catching me unawares. I was still shook from the night before and was in no mood to be chatting. Well, look who it is. Eddie Durkin. Never working. What are you doing for work these days, Eddie? He asked conceitedly. Work? Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked. But I wouldn't want to bore you with the details, Michael. Ah, no. Sure, you're grand. I've taken the afternoon off. One of the witnesses didn't show up in court. What were you saying you were at these days? The sneaky prick was cross-examining me, probing for information, in a bid to make me look like a tit. He was using some kind of Freudian psychoanalysis he'd picked up in law school. Well, Michael, I said, I'm waiting on a call back from a very successful interview I had last Monday as an insurance actuary. I think it's in the bag between the two of us. I smugly downed the remainder of my pint, satisfied that he would fuck off with that false knowledge in his ear. I wouldn't mind, but I haven't a clue what such a job entails. Something to do with numbers and shit. I wouldn't mind, but I got a D in foundation maths, and that's fucking bad. You're an actuary? Wow. You must have been hitting the books pretty hard since the last time I saw you. Oh yeah, been turning things around big time, Mikey boy. Now please excuse me for a second. I need to go for a big long piss. Hey, hang on a minute, wait a minute there, Eddie. I might be able to help you out. Help me with what? Well, as Providence would have it, turns out a good friend of mine, Dermot O'Looney, is looking for an actuary up in Dublin. It's a big German firm. I'll recommend you for the position this instant. After all, we go back a very long way. And us Mayo boys have to stick together, right? Before I could react, he pulls out his iPhone. The big one, big fancy one in an OtterBox. Starts talking to his friend. Well, Jermid, how are you? Come here to me. It's an old school friend of mine here. Eddie Durkin. Yeah, he's recently become a qualified actuary. I think he could be the very man you're looking for. Certainly. Next thing, he hands me over his phone. I take it cautiously. Hello, I said. Eddie, Dermot O'Looney here. How are you? Not too bad. And yourself? It's Friday. Can't complain. I believe you're interested in our actuary position. It's very competitive, and a specific role you'll be undertaking. We will be looking for your best possible candidate. But being as you're a good friend of Jennings, I can see you this Monday at our office in Dublin. Let me just check my schedule. How's 9:30 sound? Shit had gotten very real. Very fucking quickly. Jennings was eyeballing me the whole time, his intense peepers recording every flinch and micro-expression on my face, storing it up on his internal narcissistic HDD. He was putting me into the footings of a soon-to-be hilarious anecdote in front of his pink shirt-wearing, long haircut-having ass bros, lambasted in Ralph Lauren Eau de Toilette, accompanied by their bottle-blonde, fake-tanned Michael Kors handbag-toting nouveau-riche girlfriends at one of his luxury dinner parties. And the worst thing is, his sexy wife Hannah will be there, laughing, thus making this triumph all the sweeter for Jennings. Buzz's face was one of sheer perplexity. He knew only too well I was way out of my depth this time. He was also well aware of the deep underlying disdain Jennings and I harboured for each other. It was time to shit or get off the jacks. If I was going down, then I'd be taking Jennings down with me. Mutual assured destruction. Either way, there was no positive outcome from all of this. Or was there? I accepted the meeting up in Dublin. How hard could it be? Show a boatload of enthusiasm and hope for the very best. I was committing to a 2.5-hour journey into the gates of the abyss. First thing Monday morning. So I hung up the phone, passed it back to Jennings, and thanked him for the opportunity. I even bought him a pint to show my appreciation through gritted teeth. Good luck with Jermid, Eddie. He's a tough nut to crack. But I'm sure you'll know how to handle things. I'm sure I will, I said. So now I had to fake it until I make it, in a job I neither understood nor wanted. So off I went, taking the 6:15 a.m. bus up to Dublin, buying the day return ticket as it was the cheapest option, loaded with a freshly written CV and business cards I'd printed the night before. On my CV it stated I'd been working in a Fortune 500 insurance company, selling conferences from Marcus to Evans, whoever the fuck he is. Monday morning. You don't just walk into a glass tower filled with big shots dressed like a man selling stolen power tools at a car boot sale. No, I had to look the part. So I went into Penny's on Saturday, or Primark as they're called in the UK, and bought myself a nice suit. I could then wear it to weddings, christenings and funerals after the event, so I was already making progress. I entered the office at 9:55 a.m. I was late. Still, I was networking, handing out business cards to successful looking people, even janitors. I was sure to take Buzz's advice by taking a gram of cocaine, because you can talk real cool shite when coked up. That's what professionals in the music business do, and most of them are doing just fine. I was dead set on getting the job. I was trying to use the law of attraction to my advantage. I visualized hanging out in top restaurants, ordering underling employees around in the office, screaming to lads down the phone. It looked great. Sure, the job was as good as mine. The elevator door opened with a ping at the 5th floor. Here we go, Eddie, I said, sniffing a bump of chonk off my key, and downed a large sip of whiskey from the naggin concealed in my jacket pocket. I felt like the Incredible Hulk, powerfully ambitious, overflowing with male vitality. Now I couldn't wait to meet this loony lad. The office floor was airy, not the fusty partitioned environment I had imagined. An attractive secretary told me to sit as I waited for the big boss man to turn up. Would you like a cup of tea? She asked. Yeah, sure, why not? I said. She returned minutes later with the tea. Again, I took the paddy whiskey out of my pocket, topping up the hot beverage. A drop of the hard stuff, you know the score. I don't know what rattled her cage, but you want to see the look she gave me. You'd swear I'd ask her to make me a Napoli-style quattro stagioni pizza in a wood-fire oven. The moment of truth, or should I say total pack of lies, was drawing near, and with that, my opportunity to thwart the trap Jennings had set. I planned on taking things one step further and actually landing the bloody job. The glossed pine-finished door to a glass-walled office swung open, revealing the big boss man himself, O'Looney. He was wearing typical financial garb, green slacks, striped pink shirt, shine bald shaved head, thin-rimmed spectacles. He was a bit of a chubber in his early 40s. I involuntarily blurted out, "It is time!" in a strange cinematic voice. I went into O'Looney, all guns blazing, firmly grabbing his hand. "How the fuck are you, man?" I said. "Can't wait for this fucking job. Let's get this interview done as soon as possible. I want to do some shopping while I'm up in Dublin." He laughed, but I was deadly serious. During the interview stage, O'Looney noticed I'd wrote in the CV skills section that my skills included standing up for very long periods of time and taking a good bollocking. Sure, I don't know how I managed it, but didn't I get the fucking job? After 1 week into the job, I thought the jig was up. I was asked to present a PowerPoint on solvency capital ratios. With that in mind, I ended up doing a 45-minute speech based on the dangers of snorting lighter fluid. I think I might have just gotten away with it. One woman clapped. Later that week, I befriended a bespectacled, insecure gent called Sean from Roscommon Town. He was 28, shy, yet somewhere inside I could see a session monster lurking within. Being from Connacht, he understood what it was like to be in a country bumpkin living in the big city. We bonded up over pints and arduous talk about Premiership football. He was also a Liverpool fan. This helped to bolster my intentions of befriending him. In turn for him helping me become a competent insurance actuary, I would give him a crash course in how to be a hardy buck. From talking whimsical pub talk to women on nights out, to protecting himself against would-be assailants on the street. Things were going well. I learned enough lingo after a week to remain undetected. I used my newly acquired qualification as my excuse for being wet around the ears and unexperienced in the insurance game. Sure, I'm still in the job writing this. I guess we find out later if I get fired or not. Maybe the bastards are stringing me along as part of a bigger lampoon. Then again, there's a slight possibility Jennings has had an introspective change of heart and is actually making an attempt to atone for his twatty past behaviour. Worst case scenario, I'll get paid 2 weeks for doing fuck all. I tell you, if those walls could talk, they'd tell me to get the fuck out of Dodge. Now. Most of the time, nobody bothers to fact check your CV anyway, and if they do, the job wasn't right for you. Knock on enough doors and ye shall receive. Just ace the interview with lofty chat and make a good impression. Show interest in the job, even if it is dull as fuck, and always look busy. It's that simple. Hasn't anyone noticed? The easier the job, the more money you get. Cleaning toilets is hard and shitty work, and you get peanuts for doing it. Now take a hedge fund banker. They make millions from sitting on their asses all day. It doesn't make sense. Most of the time, nobody bothers fact-checking your CV anyway, like I said. So now you've lied on your CV and talked enough waffle. Congratulations, you too are now a hedge fund banker. What do you do now? Show interest and look busy and learn along the way. Fucking hedge fund bankers, man. Bunch of wankers. They get pissed off at the little men join up and squeeze them on Wall Street bets. And fucking GMC GameStop. Oh, they'll go crying to the SEC then. Oh ho, the bastards. Speaking of bastards, here's another story about the Viper from school. The time when he stole my Power Rangers pencil case for a laugh and turned the red T-Rex lad's head into a penis. Where his feet and legs once were, now a hairy scrotum. His head bellowing out an unimaginable amount of blurt, ejaculating all over the other members of the mighty Morphin Power Squad. All of this was accompanied with detailed labels and biological descriptions of the functioning penis, vas deferens, epididymis, and seminal vesicle. It was actually very impressive. He's clearly been listening in biology class, whether intentionally or subconsciously. It went in somewhere. The yellow female character was saying, "Your spook is savage, I was so incensed by the attack that I started to beef, a word for crying, as well as a long-standing feud. Its sentimental value was beyond comprehension. The owl lady bought that out of money she earned wiping old people's arses in a nursing home. Looking back now, as a 39-year-old man, I can laugh it off. But in fairness, it was a pretty decent job. If it had happened to someone else, I would have given him a reassuring pat in the back and offered him a stinger bar from the tuck shop. But in any case, the handwriting was a dead giveaway, meticulously spaced and carefully placed over the arrow, the work of a vain and troubled young mind, seeking approval from his peers. You see, the Viper was of slight build and found my frame imposing. He was jealous of my ability to creel lads into the bottom of a pylon. When puberty kicked in at the age of 14, I had to go toe-to-toe against our heavy-handed history teacher, Bunyan, Mr. Lally. He was a genius in academia, but a fecklessly hopeless middle-aged man, bad with his nerves. His lack of loquacious instructions had turned into shouts of resentment, indecipherable ranting, a din of vocal claps and bellowing. The odd thing would come out clear as day. Treaty of Versailles. Martin Luther, diet of worms. For the kids that he taught. I once witnessed him clattering Davy McGuinness with the edge of a steel ruler across the knuckles for farting loudly in class. McGuinness protested his innocence, saying he tried to raise his left cheek on the glossy wooden surface of the table cum seat, but he'd mistimed the colonic push, creating a reverberation that sounded like a cross between a creaking door and a mallard defending its nest. I just couldn't sit back and watch from the wings as the teacher viciously hacked the top of Davy's head with the edge of a steel ruler. So I shouted, "Bunyan, you mad fucker! Would you leave him alone before you kill him? It's not worth the time in Thug Mansion, man!" Bunyan leapt for me, tooth and nail. I could smell the coffee on his breath. The warm smell of body odour whipped up through the air as the tails of his pinstriped suit jacket flailed like a bat-winged demon escaping the bowels of hell. Thanks to boxing lessons from local traveller Brad Mahan, I knew the best case scenario was to cover up like Tyson, shielding myself from the volley of clocks he was dishing out about my person. I pleaded with him. "Calm down, Bunyan, you mad cunt." This only served to make him even more aggressive. Fuck this carry-on, I thought to myself, as the dull thud struck me about the fishog. I was hunched down, fists glued to my forehead, pinned into the corner of the room over the dustbin. I knew I had to take an evasive action. Every shot I conceded was accompanied by yellow and black flashes and the smell of burning toast. The adrenaline was coursing through my blood. It was fight or flight in full HD. Leave me alone! I remembered Tyson's signature move, the peekaboo. Cover up, duck under, feint to the left, and counter with a right hook.
That's unconscionable.
I hunched down low, fists grazing my crown. Boom! I stood up, being handy at the shot put, unleashed everything I had like a coiled spring. Boff! I let him have it to the jaw. Poor bastard didn't know what hit him. The eyes in his head rolled back and went white. He was dazed. Sounded like a zombie. Stumbling around trying to get his footing. Arms swinging wildly. Half asleep. Just to be on the safe side, I ducked under his arms. Minimised the distance. Then unfurled a bone-crunching left hook to the liver. Just under the ribs on the left side. "Good night and God bless,"
Fucko,
I said as he fell silently into the arms of Martin Wuzza Warren, an English Amathon who'd recently moved over from Hertfordshire. He was a big bastard of a lad, good for nothing but ploughing fields.
and fuck all else.
He had a big head, but a small brain. It brought new depth to open-mindedness. He laid Bunyan down tenderly on the floor. As the class fell silent, suddenly Liam O'Maloney shouted, "Quick, let's turn the desks back to front. When he wakes up, he won't know what happened." So that's what we did. The problem was, he didn't wake up, even after the school bell rang. So we did what anyone would do. And we all fucked off home.
Good luck, lads.
He returned after the weekend, quizzing us about what had happened to him. We told him everything was sound when he left. He must have had a blackout. And the desks turned back to front? Well, you'll have to ask Mulder and Scully about that. How we laughed. Sure, it was all a bit of harmless crack.
Just a bit of jossing, man.
School was depressing enough at the best of times. Its resources and staff were the opposite to cutting edge. You could say it was a blunt mass. Its exterior was a collection of eroding building projects from the 50s with extensions from the 70s, showing the signs of neglect, a lack of upkeep and pride. Castletown itself is a similar affair. Its inhabitants adopt an attitude of, fuck it, it's not my job, someone else get paid to do it. We've actually regressed. The old days we had a cinema, a leisure centre. We even had a railway station, which would depressingly chug eastwards to Dublin as red eyes would wave off loved ones bound for the mines and tunnels of England.
USA railroads.
Or if you were really ambitious, Australia.
Ah, yeah.
Man, I could only imagine how boring Australia must have been in the old days. I remember always watching Prisoner Cell Block H.
He used to give me roses, but that was on the outside.
For those of you too young to remember, it was a 70s prison soap filled with rough Aussie birds. There was a lesbian lady in it called Judy. She was sound. And a thundering bastard of a prison guard called Ferguson.
Whack off, Finnegan tits.
Probably related to those Scotch loyalist wankers you hear about. Cons. I had great crack with the owl lad. I'd ask him questions and he seemed to know the answers to everything. We'd sit up till all hours watching mad shit on TV. That's where I got my taste for the late night crack and the wanting to go to America. We'd enjoy lavish snacks, tinned peaches and evaporated milk, a dollop of ice cream and Coca-Cola. We'd watch cop dramas and horror movies, westerns, fantasy, sci-fi, and sometimes a movie would come on where I got to see naked women. I pretended I was covering my eyes, but really I was looking the whole time. It was brilliant. I remember one night, I must have been about 8, I was up watching TV, enjoying the peaches and milk. We were watching The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie.
David Bowie.
David Bowie is a very arty bisexual who was mad into space and spiders. His music is brilliant, especially after a few toots from the Babylonian jig-jag.
Smoking a Bowie.
So I'm watching this movie at the coffee table, mixing the transparent syrup with evaporated milk that surrounded the peaches, a poor man's peaches and cream. And this woman in a pink dress comes out of the room and sees David Bowie, but he's an alien with glowing eyes. So she pisses herself. Literally. There was a close-up shot of her crotch wearing this weird 1960s style dress. Her drawers filled up with piss and it ran down her legs. I spat out a mouthful of food on the carpet. My owl lad clipped me around the back of the lug. Every time I see tin peaches and syrup, it always reminds me of that. So yeah, Town. It's a love-hate job. Not like the crime TV show on RTE everyone raves about, but an actual emotional conflict.
Nodges after you.
On one side, you have to love Castletown, for it's a town steeped in a rich history that you have to go out of your way to find. And most people think these days history is boring, because they had shit technology back then. The name Castletown came about because there was a castle here long ago, and then there was a town built around it. They say there was a nobleman called Squire Carney who was feuding with Sir Rhubarb of Bal. They went to battle over the affection of a farmer's daughter. Apparently, she wasn't the best looking, but she was mad in the sack, and she looked a bit like Gianna Michaels, and she would do anything. And I mean anything. Turns out she was two-time with the 2 boys. So sure enough, after not using the sheep's gut traditionally used back in the days as a replacement for a Jimmy hat, she then fell pregnant. And as the old saying goes, if you fall into a bed of nettles, it's hard to know which one stung you. So after receiving the word of possible squireage, the 2 lads contacted a mystic guru from Tupper Quack,
Some druid called Focolango,
who told them to duel it out on top of Carron Clegg,
a big hill.
At the beginning of a new moon, the victor of the fight would surely be the father of the unborn child.
Trust the science.
3 solid hours they battled. Sword clashed on shield. The stench of trampled mud, sweat, fear, and iron from blood that was drawn. It was reported that both men fought valiantly, falling to their knees, till the moment they both reached a point of potential, mutual assured destruction, blades held to each other's throat, steam rising up against the cold wintry moon. At once, the 2 men realised that such an adversary would make a truly awesome ally. "What are we at here, man?" said King Carney. "Fair play to you, hey. You put up a fair old bit of fighting there, so you did." Sir Rhubarb replied, "You handy out with the slaps, the jabs. Your blocks are solid as fuck, man. Should we go down the town and cause holy fuck?" So that day, the 2 warriors would go riding around town and kicking off on people for a laugh. They were a right pair of bullies. If you see the pair of them coming down the road at you, you'd want to be handy with the steel, if you know what I mean. Earn your keep. Warren G style.
That's right.
What happened to the sexy farmer's daughter, you may wonder? Turns out she was just constipated, probably due to the lack of fibre in her diet at the time. She ended up shacking up with her first cousin, Barry the Beetle, and had 17 kids. She wouldn't be too sexy after squeezing out all those kids, hey? They say childbirth is pretty hard going on a woman's physique, unless she was mad into doing Pilates and body balance, which is highly doubtful, considering there were no mod cons back in them days. But then again, people lived in a higher state of ignorance of the world around them, so they didn't have to worry about interrailing and taking stupid fucking selfies of themselves. So back to my feelings about my hometown. You can encounter some of the most impressive, enlightened and culturally experienced people you could ever wish to meet. One of Castletown's best exports is people. It's a legacy that Ireland has endured for centuries.
A divider.
A sad, sad legacy, which has divided families and stretched the bonds of even the steeliest of friendships.
I'll see you around, man. Don't know where.
It's often the best of lushers and liveliest characters that find the pace of rural life stifling, and with a lack of opportunity, they have to get the fuck out of Dodge. So when these people get back from globetrotting, they experience an anticlimax. For example, when I came back from my 3-month stint in America, I thought everybody was going to be made up to see me, asking about my Jack Kerouac, life on the road style experience. But when I landed into Duncreeby's pub, like the prodigal son, all the lads were just glued to a midweek Man U versus West Ham game. It wasn't even a crucial match either. They were talking pub talk about the game. Lads of all shapes and sizes huddled around the bar giving pseudo-expert analysis. I walked up excitedly, shouting, "I'm back!" They didn't even bother turning their heads. "What do you want? A medal?" said my best friend Buzz McDonnell. I was so disappointed that I almost clocked him with a good stiff left jab. But I thought, it's not his fault that he's such an ignorant bastard. That's just the vibe uptown. So I set out to find myself a woman, only to realise, after 2 minutes, there would be very little womanising done in Castletown that night, nor any other night, not even in the surrounding towns. Culchima, Schwinford, all of them were empty of revellers. Where did I think I was? Beirut. From what I was told, that's one of the best party cities in the world. I wouldn't mind, but I was dressed up like a big shot and everything. The coolest American threads I bought cheap while in the States.
Ralph Lauren jocks.
I was lathered in the finest Giorgio Armani Aqua Geo toilet water.
I was all dressed up with nowhere to go.
Freshly waxed hair, the lot.
American Crew hair wax.
I turned up in the brothers Lamborghini, a sweet creamy 8-litre job with black trimmings, leather seats, jumbo wheels. You might say, yeah, sure, it's an old tractor from the late 80s. Still, it had the Lambo Bull logo on it. Gotta count for something, right?
Bella ingegneria italiana.
Not wanting to waste such assets, I drove relentlessly around 9 towns in the East Mayo area on a Tuesday night in early December in search of licentious interaction with a beautiful woman. After failing the search for a full-bodied Amazon woman, I conceded a more mediocre woman would do just fine. Alas, there were none to be found. I was going to have to settle with even a rough woman of any age.
The dander was up.
Failing that, I had a wank at the wheel down the old Bog Road. The bagging was full and the venom just wanted out, but I couldn't get me fantasies right in me head. I tried to think of women.
Tasty women.
But I didn't have a credible backstory to go along with it. Without a solid preamble to the hypothetical deed, the pedal and crank experience falls flat on its face. So I drove home in a huff and went to bed.
Wanked myself to sleep.
So after my American adventure, I was back to where I started, unemployed,
Depressed.
in the Owlbear's gaff.
Well, now that concluded part 8 of the Hardy book. Not too bad, if I do say so myself. Spent a couple of fucking days on that, so I did, hey. Oh ho ho, come here to me. If you like what you hear, and you think you got friends out there in need of a bit of a livener, a bit of a pick-me-up during these turbulent times of inflation and nonsense and inflation and old war and shit like that. They need a good laugh, man. And I'm happy to do my part, hey. Do you know what I mean, man? And come here, if you want to contribute and throw a few Bob Durkans' way, go on to the Hardy Books Patreon and become a monthly subscriber job. And if you want to do a one-off donation job, hit me up on PayPal/Maloney's Digest. Who the fuck is Maloney, man? Come here. Hope you've enjoyed listening to this now. Enjoy yourself. And maybe give it another listen. Because it's multi-layered, multi-dimensional job. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I'll fuck off. Talk to you later. Good luck.